Good evening, Mishpachah. Welcome to the Aliyah day at night, and I'm Zagan Rayford, and it's a pleasure being here with you this evening. We're going to be discussing the first and second Aliyot of Toldot, and it's very interesting. Father knows best. Uh, in some instances, mother knows best and needs to tell them. And so basically, just please subscribe to our channel as always, and also click the bell so that you know what's happening, what's going on, and you'll be notified. And leave comments, please, and like the video and share with your friends, of course. Again, it's a pleasure being here with you this evening. And this is the first Aliyot, first and second Aliyot. Let's go ahead and these basically Genesis chapter 25, beginning with verse 19. And these are the generations of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Armenian of Paran Aram, the sister of Laban, okay, the Armenian, to himself as a wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord opposite his wife. And we'll be discussing that aspect because she was barren. And the Lord accepted his prayer. And Rebekah, his wife, conceived. And the children within her, and she said, "If it be so, why am I like this?" And she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two kingdoms will separate from your innards, and one kingdom will become mightier than the other kingdom, and the other and the elder will serve the younger. And her days to give birth were completed, and behold, there were twins in her womb, and the first one emerged ruddy. He was completely like a coat of hair, and they named him Esau. And afterward, his brother emerged, with his hand was grasping Esau's heel, and he was named Yaakov or Jacob." Now I'm going to stop right there just for a moment and just kind of go over a bit of intel. There were so many different, and that's a beautiful thing about Judaism and our sources, that it's very, very, we have so many different sources here to avail ourselves. And it was just an interesting concept of trying to determine which ones I was actually going to use. Zagan asked me, "Well, what are you going to use?" And you know what? I just basically said the Bible. And so, but there are, of course, so many different sources, which makes it really, really a bit complicated, but fun. So let's go ahead and get started in that. And basically what I wanted to do was just kind of just go over the characters in if you will, our play this evening. Of course, we'll begin with Isaac. Isaac, of course, was the son of the third patriarch, okay, son of Abraham and Sarah, and husband of Rebekah, father of Jacob and Esau. And actually, he was the first to be circumcised when he was 8 days old. Okay. Of course, Rebekah. Rebekah was of the four matriarchs. Okay. She was second of those matriarchs, wife to Isaac, of course, mother of Jacob and Esau. And of course, she grew up in a very interesting land that was full of idolatry and witchcraft and all other types of bad things, but yet she stayed true to her purpose. And that was just something that was innate inside of her. And of course, it showed in many instances. Now, I added a character here, or another person here, Shem, because Shem is going to play a very active role here in communicating the will of God to the lady who is concerned about what's happening inside of her. And of course, Shem was the son of Noah. And of course, he survived the flood. And so basically, he and his grandson, actually it was his great grandson, were actually in charge of a Torah study, a house of Torah study, yeshiva. And then, of course, Esau. Esau, another name for Esau was Edom. And of course, he was son of Rebekah and Isaac. He sold his birthright. We know the story. He sold his birthright for lentils. And we'll be discussing those lentils because those lentils played a very important part, because we can just go ahead and say that right now, because the lentils were actually a meal that Jacob made for his father, Isaac, because he was mourning the death of Abraham. And so that is how that pretty much played into that. Jacob was a hunter, of course, and he led a very immoral lifestyle, but he was very true to his father. And that was one of the things that the sages talk about, is the fact that he did recognize that his father meant really something. But the thing about it is, there were things that he did simply because his grandfather was alive. And now that that was coming to an end, there were things that he felt that he didn't have to do. So we'll also discuss about this too. Now, Isaac and Rebekah, of course, they were married for 20 years without having children. And then finally, Rebekah gets pregnant. Now, one of the things I want to talk about here is after about 40 years, there's still gossip going on about whether Isaac is Abraham's son. And interestingly enough, until Abraham, there was no sign of aging. The years passed, but he never got old as far as looking old. And so there was a time when he actually prayed to HaShem in angst, and the signs of aging actually began in man. And that's an interesting phenomenon there, because until Jacob, there was no sign of feebleness, until Jacob prayed and said, Lord, show me when is my time. And so after he fervently prayed that, then we now begin to see the effects of aging. So those two things are actually coming in. And of course, each one of these men prayed because they were just, they wanted some change. Abraham and Isaac, identical. You spoke to Abraham, you were speaking to Isaac. To Isaac, you spoke to Isaac, you were speaking to Abraham, and there was basically no difference. And of course, Abraham was tiring of this. And this is, of course, very, in the Talmud, discussed very, very precisely there. And that was Bava Mitzvah 87a. And again, even with Sarah at 90 years of age, The people are wondering whether she can give birth, and whether Abraham can father a child. And so these little nuances in our story play a great deal, simply because they talk about how our sages, how our patriarchs, how our matriarchs are human, just as we are. And so the idea that there was no aging or physical recognition of age, that's something that we kind of wonder. Okay, well, Abraham, why did you pray that prayer? Or Isaac, why did you pray that prayer? Sometimes we get to a point where there's necessary 4 times like that. Now, as you study more, you'll see more intricate aspects of that. And the Zohar states that Abraham, when praying for children, both of these men had scenarios where they were married, but they had no children. Well, Abraham made a statement of fact that he didn't have children, and he didn't actually pray. He just said, "Hey, I don't have any seed." And then, of course, God blessed him, and Sarah conceived. Well, Isaac was different. Isaac prayed, and actually prayed. He didn't make a statement of fact. He prayed. And he prayed alongside his wife, because actually the Zohar says, and our other sources say, that he knew he wasn't sterile. So he prayed for his wife to be pregnant. And of course, she conceived. And that's the interesting difference between the two of them. And so, again, we look at just different nuances between Isaac and Abraham and Sarah and Rebecca. Now, Rebecca is pregnant, and there is a war going on inside of her. So she asked HaShem for clarification. Now, the interesting thing about this clarification is, where's she going to go to get it? She knows about Noah's son, Shem, who is a very righteous man, and Noah's great grandson, who is a righteous person. 2 righteous men who are there and hear God, and she goes directly to them. It's the sages have not necessarily arguments, but different interpretations of why didn't they go to their husbands. Why didn't she go to her husband? But basically, we'll leave that for another scenario. But basically, when she went directly to the yeshiva to speak directly with Shem, and Shem explained to her, God explained to her via Shem, that there are 2 nations inside of her. Now, the interesting thing about this is the idea of what these 2 children were doing inside. There was already a hatred of Jacob in the womb by Esau already. And it's interesting that our sages tell us that the Yetzer Hara isn't given until after birth, and yet there was a hatred that had already formed. And so what basically is going on is these 2 nations warring, and actually not warring, but there's a entity of sanctification that's in Jacob. Jacob, even in the womb knows what righteousness is. At their birth, basically what happens is Esau comes out first. Now, as he's coming out, Jacob grabs his ankle and holds on to it. And when Esau has birthed, he comes right out with him. Now, the sages say also that this was done for a reason, so that his mother would not have to go through two births. Also, another aspect of this is that when the evil would go out first, there would be a cleansing of the womb, and that's what Jacob did as he was coming out, was cleansing the womb. So there are these little nuances that come out as we study this and understand that the two of them had a purpose even prior to their birth. So just kind of understanding that, I wanted to mention some things about their mother, that she was very, very much concerned about what was going on the inside of her. And I want to spend just a little bit of time about this. What does it actually mean that within her? She knew within her that there was something that was not right, and actually not right, but different. Even to the point where she made the statement that if this is what it's going to be a mother, I don't know about this. So the word that represents within her in Hebrew is Be'ekaba. And that word itself means what's within me. And it has the same letters as Rivka. And so what's in me, that whole environment was talking about, she knew that there was a presence about her and a presence in her that was to represent the future. And so she was very sensitive to the inner worlds. And therefore, she wanted to understand the ultimate significance of why there was such a toiling in her pregnancy. So, of course, that was the main reason that she went to Shem. On a note here, the name of a person is the essence of his soul. And the Pasuk illuminates the origin of Yaakov Avinu, or Jacob Avinu, our name, by mentioning that he was born holding on to the heel of Esau. In what way does this define Jacob Avinu's true essence? Although Jacob and Esau were twins, their innate character traits were at opposite extremes. Jacob cared about the mitzvah that others crushed with their heel. He retained a love and devotion for mitzvah through his anava. Now, anava is a word that basically means his humility. Anava is humility. So the midot of anava would be the character trait of humility, which is what he worked on a daily basis. He was in Torah daily. Okay. Although he was humble, Uh, Jacob's greatness was nurtured in his constant pursuit of avodah, of HaShem, or service to HaShem, constantly on a day-to-day basis. And of course, Esau was basically the exact opposite. There were times when Esau would just go out, and he, in some instances, he was called a highwayman, because basically he would rob and kill, and then come back and portray the beautiful, wonderful son in front of his father. Now, there's coming a time, of course, when it's time for the advent of the birthright to be sold. So in this interim, this is, of course, right at about the time when, Abraham has died. And Esau comes in. Of course, he's very, very hurt and tired and just completely put out. Well, he's basically been out doing what he normally does, which is warring and taking advantage of anyone and everything. Well, this time he was warring and taking advantage of, not necessarily taking advantage of, but warring with his rival, which was Nimrod. And in this instance, he won. Nimrod is now dead. And so now everything that Nimrod has that Esau considered of importance, Esau now owns and now brings back. And of course, there, Jacob has already prepared the morning meal for his father. And Esau now asked for some of this. Now, some of the sages say that he was very weak, and so he just asked for it to be poured into him. And he says, okay, well, yes, I'll do that, but consider this, selling your birthright. Now, because of his innate hatred of being sincere to God, there was just things he did not want to do. It was just not in him to be right with God, with HaShem. And he saw absolutely no need in having this and having the birthright itself. And so basically he's just deciding that, you know what, I don't see it. I don't see a need for it. And now that my grandfather is dead, my father is going to be dead soon, so I will be on my own to be able to do whatever I need, and the birthright in the future is not something that I need. And of course, this was his idea of what, basically, non-God status. So he basically agrees. And of course, we know the story. He agrees. And then, of course, when it's time for Isaac to give the blessing, then, of course, Rebekah, his mother, and he planned, of course, the blessing to be of the firstborn to be bestowed on Jacob, not Esau. Now, interesting enough, Esau is upset. Esau is upset when he finds out, but you know, he's more upset that he was shown up, he was taken advantage of, than the actual birthright itself. So in the vernacular, he was more upset that he was conned rather than he was losing something of precious, virtuous value. The idea that he was really wanting the birthright and he really didn't know what it meant, is not conceivable, because even from the womb, his idea of just being good was not there. As we read that even in the womb, when they would pass by the house of the yeshiva, whereas Jacob would run to be born, and where they pass by the house of the idol of Dagon, Esau would race to be born. And so this was constantly going on. And so even in the womb, so this, of course, followed them out into the world. Let's see here. Now, let's just speak a little bit about Rebecca. Rebecca's life, of course, began in Paran. She began as the daughter of Bethuel, okay, and the daughter of an evil person, the sister of an evil person, and she dwelt in a wicked land. In contrast, Isaac came from a family which lived in justice, virtue, and clarity. And providence, therefore, united violence with kindness, so that the fruit of this union would be perfect, permeated with a harmony of strength and gentleness. This is Rabbi Monk speaking about her. Now, Isaac was 60 when his sons were born. He had to reach this age of intelligence, okay, according to Avos 5:24, in order to be able to endow his spiritual heir, Jacob, with the maximum of moral perfection. And this is, of course, the Zohar. Now, you'll notice that the Torah talks about age and allowing an individual to become of age or get to an age to where he can impart good wisdom, good understanding, and good knowledge, correction to someone of a lesser age. This is part of Torah. This has always been a part of Torah. This will always be a part of a good relationship between a father and son, between individuals who are seeking good intel, good idea, good counsel. Good counsel comes with wisdom. And I won't say unfortunately, but age just happens to be part of that. Another aspect. Now, the interesting thing about these two aliyot is these are pretty much going to set up next week's aliyot, the first two aliyot, which I'll be doing again. And so basically, this is the precursor for what's going to happen then, because of course now there's a time for Jacob to leave the land, but God is telling Jacob not to leave. Why is God telling Jacob not to leave the land? Because, Isaac rather, not to leave. He's telling Isaac not to leave simply because Isaac is the seed of the land. He was offered as the Akedah. And so that's his presence is there. We have just the source for, just a second here. got just a little bit ahead of myself here. Um, I wanted to uh, give some other intel about Isaac and his relationship with his father. The Both of them had the opportunity to have beautiful wives, and of course, Avram, before he was Abraham, basically, when Pharaoh saw his wife, he asked her to say that he was his sister, and of course, that transpired. And then, of course, when he was Abraham, he asked her to be his sister again. So that's happened with Abraham twice. With Isaac, it happens once. Now, is that something that was transcended or sent directly from the father to the son? Um, I don't think so. I do believe, though, that there was an instruction that was done, and that instruction was not given in the that the Torah would say, but a father speaking to his son. Um, let's see. One thing about the mourner's meal, which Jacob prepared, occasionally a lively ideologically discussion between the brothers, during which Esau categorically denied himself in the immorality of the soul, in the resurrection of the dead, and ultimately in the existence of God. Jacob then asked him, "Since you claim that there is neither a future world nor reward in the hereafter, why do you value the birthright which calls for serving God?" So began the bargaining, and this is what I meant to bring out earlier, was so began the bargaining, because there was a bargaining process between the two of them. Um, we're pretty much out of time here. There's so much more to go over. So basically, when as a matter of fact, I'm sure it's going to be handled with the third Aliyah, with our next guest speaker. So again, thank you for watching, and thank you. Make comments, please, and we will see you on our next Aliyah.